Hi, everyone, and thanks for being with me. I'm going to talk today about kids in youth detention because the ABC tonight on Four Corners are going to report on kids in a detention centre, Banksia Detention Centre, I think it is, in WA, how they're treated. Now, we've had the Dondale situation in the Northern Territory 4 years ago where kids were treated in the most horrific manner in relation to their detention, and spit bags or things were put over them, that they were held down, they were beaten, they were sprayed, they were treated in the most abhorrent, brutal way. And we're now seeing the same thing happening in WA. Now, the question for me really is about how we as a society are caring for our youth. If children are neglected, if they're prevented from doing the things that they need to do in terms of their education, if they are prevented and they're unable to get the nutrition they need in terms of food, being fed appropriately, and so on, we will often make sure that those children are removed from their parents. But what do we do when the state does the same? When the state neglects, beatens, and brutalises our youth, our children, what do we do then? There is nothing that we can do apart from shining a light on it and people like you and I making a stand against the brutalisation that occurs with regard to our young people. So it is important that you and I understand what's happening regarding our youth in our country, and that we find ways in order to be able to rectify the damage that our governments are doing to young people. There's a section. So the ABC are doing the show tonight, as I've mentioned, and they have written an article on this on the ABC website, which you can all look at. Boys handcuffed, held down by guards, and sat on in dangerous youth detention, folding restraint, which is a type of restraint that they use for adults, and now they're doing this with regard to our kids. And there's a video there. I won't bother playing that. I just want to read some of the article to you. Officers dragged the boy to the ground, handcuffed him, and forced him into his cell. 3 guards restrain him face down, while at least 5 others watch on. He's wearing nothing but a rip-proof gown. An officer twists the boy's legs under their cross, and they're crossed behind him, and then sits on them. So this young person has this heavy dude sitting on him in order to restrain him. It's basically the hog tie, the boy explains. They push that far, you can feel your muscles burning and aching. It's a practice known as folding up. The boy, Steve, not his real name, was in solitary confinement in juvenile detention, locked up in his cell for almost 24 hours a day. Now, I don't know what crime this kid's committed, but no one deserves to be locked up for 24 hours a day. That is crazy, and that's making you crazy. To have that much, to have no freedom whatsoever, to have it totally taken away from you, that's child abuse. But who's doing anything about it? Well, as far as I can tell, nobody. The names of the boys have been, got all that. Officers folding up Steve after he became agitated and kicked his leg through his open cell door. That day, I was stuck in the cell all day, he says. I never got a shower or nothing. When officer arrived with an evening meal, he tossed a piece of bread to the floor. They chucked that out on the ground like I was an animal. And personally, I wouldn't let that go, he says. I basically wanted to get out of the cell. I can understand that. Um, Officers at Banksia Hill are regularly using the folding up or hold tight position, which has been banned in Queensland youth detention, and after review found it posed a risk of suffocating and death. But clearly in WA, thinking that they're so far away from Queensland and thinking that they're probably a country of their own, they've chosen not to accept that recommendation from Queensland. Video of a second incident begins moments after Steve hit a guard with a mop at the door of his cell. Body-worn camera footage shows 5 officers restraining Steve face down on his bed using the folding up technique as he repeatedly begs them to ease the pressure. "I can't breathe, I can't breathe, mother effers," he cried out. "Stop resisting," an officer responds. Um, this kind of taints of a little bit of George Floyd and what happened to him in terms of him dying because he couldn't breathe. Same sort of thing. So, do we have to wait until the officers actually kill a kid before we start taking any action to resolve any of these issues? There's like 100-something pound man on your legs and they're trying to say relax and it won't hurt. How are you supposed to relax when you've got like 5 or 4 blokes on top of you? Four Corners has spoken to several boys who say they've been restrained like this at Banksia Hill. One of them, Junior, describes it as getting folded up like a pram. They would have your hands touch into your head and they'd put your legs there too. They're touching your back, your spine, and they'll just push until you're screaming, he says. The Western Australian, Department of Justice said in a statement that the restraint was only authorised for officers to use at least as a last resort in the most extreme circumstances for as little time as possible where there is a safety risk to staff and other detainees. The department said approved restraint techniques should not cause pain or injury. Well, bugger off, because clearly it does. So what are you doing about it? Since 2007, Queensland has outlawed this practice. The Northern Territory Royal Commission into the Dondale Detention Centre also examined the practice. It found the application of force or body weight while an individual is handcuffed behind the back in a prone position pose significant risks of injury or death, but they're still doing it, so they don't care. More than 600 children are locked up in Banksia Hill every year. Many of them are Indigenous and many have severe neurological impairments. The folding up incident happened while Steve was in the intensive support unit, where children who misbehave or who try to harm themselves are sent. So clearly, they don't have any therapeutic technique. They don't know what to do with these kids. They just treat them all so badly that at the end of the day, they are just trash as far as the department are concerned, and they're not prepared to do anything in order to improve the situation for these kids, and that they have neurological impairments or they might be intellectually challenged is freaking no excuse to continue to damage the children in the way that they are. In fact, it should be the opposite. If someone is challenged intellectually, physically, or whatever, then less restraint is required, more care is needed, and we need to do something in order to effectively bring about significant change in this area. So we need to object. We need to put our hand up and let people know that this is actually happening in our community, and we need to find a way to hold governments responsible for the behaviours of their staff, namely these officers in this case, who are continually abusing our kids. Thanks everybody for being with me. Take care, look after yourselves, and be safe.